I want to talk to you today about the relationship between technology and human dignity. In the framework of two important evolutionary processes. The first, exponential technologies that are accelerating, and the second, how these support networks that are outcompeting hierarchical and centralized organizations. When a few thousand years ago, here in Greece, human civilization was experimenting with the first forms of democracy, the way this was achieved was unavoidably, necessarily, because based on muscular energy, on slavery, universal slavery. But today, we are at a point in our global civilization where we not only are not basing our achievements on slavery anymore, but we are at a point where we can aim for more, for going beyond what our moral systems assume to be possible. This is due to the power of exponential technologies that start almost imperceptibly as they double. It doesn't matter across what period of time, but until they reach a given threshold, they are almost invisible, even to the experts, because they are submerged in the noise of the environment around them that hides the important signal. And linear progressions at the beginning are more powerful than exponentials. That is why people tend to more traditionally interpret the phenomena rather than espousing the new interpretation that is possible. However, when that threshold is reached, it becomes visible to everybody, and they jump on board and they say, yes, I knew it all along. We are familiar with this through our computers, the personal computers, mobile phones, the supercomputers that we have in our pockets, the Internet of Things that is coming already. And it is often remarked that we are really talking about an S-curve that is going to be exhausted, but what we are really referring to is a sequence of technologies, each of them after the other, keeping this exponential trend alive. A good example of this that really lets you understand how powerful the trend is the Human Genome Project. Started in 1985, a 15-year-old project was only at 1% of its goal, already halfway through the 15 years in the 7th year. And at $3 billion, even the experts were saying, we will never get to our goal. We have to stop. They didn't realize that that 1% was reached with doublings, and progressively, on time and on budget, they reached 100% in the year 2000. But technology didn't stop. And today, you can have your genome sequenced for less than $2,000, and it will take not 15 years, but about a week. But still, technology doesn't stop. And already there are projections by those who design, manufacture, and sell the equipment for genome sequencing that in another 7 years, each of our genomes will be sequenced in real time for a few cents. When an enterprise thinks linearly, rather than understanding the power of exponentials, it doesn't matter that it was dominating its industry for 100 years. If a researcher comes and says, I invented digital photography, but the board of directors rejects the opportunity of investing in that, then it comes a year that you go bankrupt, laying off your last 10,000 workers, and it is the same year when a team of merely a dozen kids creates an app that is acquired for over $1 billion. That is the difference between understanding exponential thinking and not understanding it. Overall, this is very difficult and very complex. If you were at the apex of your entrepreneurial and organizational success 100 years ago, being included in the Standard & Poor's 500 index more or less gave you 60 years of statistically guaranteed permanence in the index itself. Today, the same results give you little more than 10 years. This has been going on for a long time. 200,000 years ago, when we decided to start using fire to pre-digest the food that we would eat so that we could dedicate time to other things rather than our cousins, other primates do, we embarked in a journey that made us understand the world better and better. Initially, we thought that it would be better to keep our knowledge secret. This condemned the alchemists to repeat the errors of others that maybe used poisonous or mortal methods to try to transform metals into gold. But now, we are using science in a virtuous circle of open information sharing. And that is the real difference between the dinosaurs and us. They didn't have telescopes. And we really have to use both literally the telescopes to watch out whether there is an asteroid coming, but also metaphorically, we have to rely on science and reason to keep developing our globally connected civilization. Global connectedness, however, does not mean to be homogeneous, to have the same answers and the same solutions imposed everywhere by the same companies, the same institutions, for every country and every possibility. As very clearly demonstrated by even the most standardized enterprises adapting and changing what they offer to the local needs. This means that not only there must not be a local moral and economical dictatorship, it also means that there cannot be. And as we understand these differences, we are able to empathize with others, even if they are not similar or the same as we are. We have to carefully understand what are the limits of this tolerance that is growing. For example, we have to be careful not to provide protection towards intolerance. Our technology is creating incredible connections. Robotic cars are now on the roads in California, and they are impacting other industries. For example, we now have to be fast developing 3D printed organs because people will stop dying in car accidents. And the artificial intelligence that is growing all around with smarter and smarter systems requires a huge challenge that we must face. If you allow these smart systems to grow in an unsupervised manner, what are the rules that will dictate their decisions? And isn't it the right thing to require for a supervision and an understanding of these rules that will necessarily include moral and ethical decisions? We have to face the necessity of developing a science and an engineering of morality. And these smart systems must take into account what is the role of humans. We cannot allow enterprises to automate without understanding that laying thousands or tens of thousands of people off because they are not needed anymore is not the same as making their processes more efficient otherwise. In the labor force, it is amazing what we can do. 1% feeds everybody. 1% procures raw materials. 6% builds the houses and the office buildings we live in and work in. 10% designs, creates, produces the objects that we are surrounded with. And in the remaining part of the service sector, the most important one, interestingly, is what concentrates on adding value to our relationships to each other in the health and education sector. But this is the workforce. Labor disengagement is increasing. There are a lot of people who are not working. And even those who work fewer and fewer hours in a given year, statistically speaking, all around the world. What is very important now is that we start understanding that the transformation that is required by individuals is huge. And if, for no fault of their own, somebody needs to develop a skill that will be valuable to his or her community, we cannot start the clock ticking and saying, you have 6 months, and if you didn't make it by then, society feels free to discard you. Labeling somebody with this unemployed label must become a slur word. During the phase transition, which the next years and decades will more strongly represent all around the world, it is going to be important to develop a relationship with our smart systems that support and help us that is non-antagonistic. There are those who fear artificial intelligence. The symbiosis that we must develop cannot be conflictual. And these autonomous machines already are helping us. They are surrounding and they are allowing our local and global communications. The Nobel Prize winning chemist Paul Crutzen called our geological era the Anthropocene, that in an eye blink transformed the planet in certainly unsustainable ways that now that we have blanketed the world with our technology, we understand is itself unsustainable. That is why we are now talking about sustainability, not because we are morally superior to previous generations, but because we do not have new continents to despoil. There is an intrinsic uncertainty in this era. It is not a question of measuring better what is going on. It is not a question of acquiring more knowledge. Nobody is superhuman, whether we are workers, students, educators, politicians. We are all equally confused and frightened by what is happening. That is why working together on decoding the future is so important, whether you are in New York, in Hong Kong, or in Athens. We have to work together to realize our dreams. It can be too soon. Leonardo, 500 years ago, dreamed of helicopters, and metallurgy was not ready. But when the time is ready, exponential change happens, even if there are those experts that object that whatever we are dreaming of is never going to be possible. Of course, the development of human civilization is not based on a natural law that gives us any kind of guarantee. That is one of the most important reasons why we have to build an inclusive global civilization. We don't know if 7 billion people are enough to find a solution to our next challenges. The hierarchical systems that served us so well in the past few hundred years are now being substituted by new networks of connected, decentralized, and distributed systems. And whether these organizations are able to overcome the resistance of established bureaucracies that are reacting with panic, overreacting really, is an important question. As we went from using muscle energy to chemical energy, and now the solar energy that is going to end the oil age, we are looking at a fundamental economic shift. Slavery ended, And now the political class has to understand that through new tools, we are going to achieve a very important change. We were able to discuss that, for example, child labor should not exist. And the bureaucracies have to understand that emancipation and empowerment of people is a one-way road that we cannot turn back from. There are no barriers. It is not possible for people to stop others to seek their opportunities on a worldwide basis. And with decentralized reputation systems, we will be able to overcome the limitations of an extremely poor proxy for what is our desire and capability to aggregate resources. The nation states are going to be measured, as well as supranational or planetary organizations, by their capacity to understand this and to create conditions for people to live in dignity in communities that are able to discover the power of these unstoppable trends. And if it is unstoppable, then there is no use for panic, really, or to trying to stop what is happening. What matters is to discard the cages of the old type of thinking. And luckily, it really costs nothing. There are zero barriers to entry for going from idea to action in today's world. And as long as we understand that there is no failure, because the outcome of our experiments matter regardless, and we can learn from them, and we can teach those learnings to our peers regardless of our perceived level of authority or reputation, we will be able to build resilient communities with increased degrees of freedoms, with large, numerous choices, and with unbounded opportunities. That is why the question is about you, whether you will join this. Thank you.